So once again, everybody is welcome, and we are about to start the efficiency and the productivity change analysis. It's a method that is highly intensive and exciting. And it is something that you're going to love and enjoy in the process. So we are going to look at the basics of efficiency and productivity analysis so that you can appreciate it more. All right. So the first thing we are going to look at is why efficiency or productivity change or performance. We're going to understand each one of this. But the most important thing is, why would somebody want to examine the efficiency, productivity change, or performance? Why are you doing what you are doing now? Why are you doing it? Well, one of the reasons why, I mean, somebody who is doing a research will say, I'm doing it because I'm told by my university as part of my postgraduate course to do this. I'm told by my university as part of my university course to do this. So the first thing to note is that it's not just for your PhD or your master's. That is why you are doing this. There are other reasons. Even in your job and in your progressive activities, you will do this. So it's not because of your research you are doing. That is part. If you look at the last but one bullet, it is for research purposes, or to identify research gaps. But another reason why you need to know the efficiency and productivity of firms is because it allows you to identify those firms that are the best practice firms. The best practice firms are the leaders in the industry, in a bank, the leading banks. The best practice firms in the oil and gas industry are the top oil and gas companies who are the movers and shakers of the industry. The top, countries in the world or in the continent are the movers and shakers of that. They become the top. Who are those? How do you identify them? You can't say that all of them are the same. What criteria, what methodology, what technique, what approach, how do you determine the best guys? And efficiency and productivity analysis will help you to be able to do that. That's one. So you get the champions of the industry, the champions of the insurance industry, the champions of the oil and gas industry, the champions of the banking industry, the champion of the electricity industry, the champions of the accounting firms industry, the champions of the restaurants, the champions of the hotels. Who are the champions? Efficiency and productivity analysis help you to do that. Two, you are able to identify the areas that these firms can improve. So first of all, you identify the champions. Second, those that are not the champions, it means that they are below champions. So what can they do to be able to improve their performance, their productivity, their efficiency? You can now set a target, because once you start talking about improvement, then you can talk about where they should get to indicate that they have improved. And these are numerical quantity. You need numbers, you need data. So the target, you can set the target, I want to achieve this number of loans by the end of the year. How do you get to that target? This approach, this method, this analysis will help you to do that. When it comes to government policies, you see, when you're able to do some of these things, you'll be able to know regulatory policies. For example, let's let's assume that you are able to find out that the capital that is needed is small. So there's a need for us to be able to have capital requirements that is higher. So the government will come out with a banking policy, a regulatory policy that the minimum capital requirement is smaller. So let's take it up. You can have tax policies. You can have liberalization, trade liberalization, regulation policies. You can have policies about ownership. You can have policies about measures and acquisition, size, conglomerations. You can have policies related to capitalizations. So all of the governmental regulatory policies, you can make them. The fourth one, management are always competing. There's a lot of competition going on in the industries across the world. How do you become a very, very competitive, company among your peers? How do you gain competitive advantage? How will management, so this is not the government, but managerial policies, how will you benchmark yourself again? Who are your peers in the industry? How do you learn in the industry? So please note all of that. And then you're able to identify performance trends and patterns. So it's not just identifying the performance at a point in time. And that is going to help you to understand the difference between efficiency and productivity, because efficiency looks more at performance at a time, whilst productivity looks more at performance over time. What are the trends? Has performance been increasing? What are the different levels and decompositions of performance? What are the patterns of performance? Why are performance cyclical? Why are they, rising all the time? Why are they falling all the time? You're able to get all of this. So efficiency analysis is good. Let me tell you one interesting thing, practical. You can become a consultant. You can become an efficiency and productivity analysis consultant for different industries. You can become a consultant. You can give them technical expertise on how they can improve. You can do that. And so it is not just for academic exercise. This is for practical work. So take note of these. These are the advantages or some of the reasons why a person will pursue efficiency and productivity analysis. But I know that for some of you, you are just looking at it for reasons of research purposes. No, it is for consultancy purposes as well. Consultants, you can make good income from this. In fact, guys, look at the paper by Sherman. I put it on the page the other time. Sherman, okay? He looked at bank branch productivity. I don't know whether you guys remember it. Bank branch productivity and efficiency or so. Okay. And this article is believe me, it's a very nice article. Sherman and Gold. It was published in Banking and Finance, Journal of Banking and Finance. The bank branch operating efficiency. It was the first paper in the area of banking, an area of DEA application in banking. And you will see that was a consultancy that they did. And then they wrote it as a journal article. So there are several incredible things that you can learn when it comes to this efficiency and productivity analysis. If you have any question, now you let me know. Okay. So what are the steps in undertaking efficiency and productivity change analysis? Please note, I've told you that I will come back and explain what we mean by efficiency, what we mean by productivity, what we mean by productivity change, what we mean by performance. I'll show you. But the analysis, the methodological approach, okay, what are the steps? How do you go about it? Well, the first thing you want to do is to select homogeneous DMUs. Now, DMUs mean decision-making units. The decision-making units are those individual firms or parts of firms or branches of firms or units of firms or department of, organizations. So these are organizations that may be profit or non-profit oriented that use similar inputs to produce similar output. That's what we call decision-making units. So instead of using firms, for many times you'll be hearing DMUs, decision-making units. They are similar. That's the homogeneous part. They are similar in the sense that they use similar inputs to produce similar outputs. So take, for example, athletes. Athletes will be using similar inputs to produce similar outputs. If you take, for example, the Air Force, all of them are likely to use similar inputs to produce similar outputs. So these are the different, homogeneous. So you can't go and talk about, I decided to bring some of them in that don't make sense much. Okay. So for example, if you say schools don't make that much sense unless you specify what you mean by schools. Because when you say schools, it can be secondary schools. If it is secondary schools, then they are homogeneous. Because you can't say secondary schools and primary schools because they do different things. You can't say universities and secondary schools because universities have different things from that of secondary schools. You cannot even compare, you can't compare polytechnics with universities because they do different things. You can't compare even clinics with hospitals because they will do different things. Okay. So when you say hospitals, you mean hospitals. So these are different DMUs. So you can see that it's not only profit-making organization. Fishing, you can look at the efficiency of fishing industries in a particular geographical area. You can look at the efficiency of hotels in this country. You can look at the efficiency and the performance of so that means that your DMUs is going to be the total number of hotels in the industry, individual hotels. But hotels are different from restaurants. So you cannot combine restaurants and hotels. You can't, because they are not homogeneous. They must be using similar inputs to produce similar outputs. Be making notes, be writing things down, be making sense of what we are saying. It will help you. Farms, in most African countries, you don't have a lot of farms, but in most European and American countries, you have farms, well-organized farms. What are the efficiency and the productivity analysis related to farms? As for banks, you are all aware, petroleum firms, even cities. Which of the cities are efficient in terms of crime rate? Okay, so you compare Accra, Kumasi, and all of that. These are new areas people don't delve into. Supermarkets, countries, EDDs. EDDs are electricity distribution districts. Electricity distribution districts. You can look at each one of them. So you can see that nobody can do efficiency and productivity analysis without having multiples of the decision-making units. That is key. Multiples of the decision-making units. You can't do that. You need multiples of the decision-making units. That is how you grow in your efficiency and productivity analysis. IRS, Internal Revenue Services, they have different branches. So you can look at how they are performing over time. And you can also take one bank and just look at the branches of the bank. Bank branch studies is very, very common. bank branch studies. There's a man called Paradi. He has pioneered this bank branch studies a lot. So these are so the first thing to do is to select your DMUs. So let me see whether you all have your DMUs. If you have your DMUs, you type yes. And let me see. Do you have your DMUs selected? Step one. Do you have your DMUs selected? Do you know your decision-making units now? Are you clear now of your decision-making units? Are you clear? Are you clear? Okay. I need to be sure that you are all typing yes or no. Okay. Are you clear of the decision-making units you are dealing with? Okay. Mention the decision-making units you are dealing with. So let me see. Mention it. Which decision-making units are you dealing with? Which ones? I really want to see all of you, your writer, because some of you are not writing. What are your decision-making units you are dealing with? One of you, two of you are not writing it. I need to know your decision-making units you are dealing with. Your decision-making units. Then there's a guy who has left. All right, so note that. Step 2 in the efficiency analysis. What is a step 2? So remember, step 1 is selecting the decision-making units. Step 2 is now that you know the industry you're going to deal with, identify or select the input and output that the firms or the DMUs or the decision-making unit, identify the inputs and outputs they use. What are the inputs and outputs that they use? What are the inputs and outputs? Because we have to know the inputs and outputs that they use. We have to know. And so that's your second step. And this step is difficult for most researchers. Who can tell me why it's difficult for most researchers? Why is the selection of the inputs and outputs difficult for most researchers? Anybody with an idea? Okay. Why is it hard? Well, it's not too hard, but why may that be hard? Diana, do you have an idea why it might be hard?
Doc, I'm still thinking about that.
Oh, do you normally think about this one? You're an expert in the area. Why do you think it might be hard?
Because I don't see why it should be hard, Doc, because once they are homogeneous.
Hold on. Let's take an industry. Since you say you don't see why it's hard. Let's take an industry like police. What are the inputs and outputs in the police?
Labor is one. Assets.
Capital. Because you use the microeconomics that you know of. You see, it's not simple. That's what I mean. The only reason why you said it's easy because your area of expertise, which is countries, you are mastered in countries, so that one you know it by heart. And when you're starting a new industry, okay, for example, if I tell you soccer, let's take soccer. Okay. Soccer. What do you think is giving the output? What is the output in football?
Could number of goals scored be an output?
Well, you can neutralize the number of goals. So you rather want to pick on number of wins.
Okay.
Wins or losses. So, but again, it is not simple. That's my point. It's not simple. Okay. So that is why many people like the easier one, where it's been applied a lot. Okay. So when you know where it has been applied a lot, you jump into that literature. So guys, listen carefully. In your next move, what you are supposed to do, okay, somebody says trophies, okay. In your next move, you all know your industry you're working in. Now, your next thing you got to do is to identify the inputs and outputs being used in that industry. Now, how do you do that? The DMUs are described by the inputs and outputs they consume and the outputs they produce, okay? But one of the things is that the input must be non-negative. Okay. In other words, we expect that you are producing a zero, no out input. You are using no input or using a positive input. And the input or output must be operational. It must be meaningful because you can't say something that another person doesn't feel is important. Let's take, for example, bank. Okay. And then in terms of bank, you decided to talk about the number of beatings that go on in the banking industry, in the banking hall. Number of beatings. So that's what you're saying. Number of beatings. How can you talk about number of beatings? Somebody would not agree with you. So it's not meaningful. It got to be meaningful. Okay? It has to be comprehensive. Very comprehensive. It's not something that, so for example, you go and talk about labor, fine. But if you go and talk about something like hours of work. Yes, Kokubuachi.
Okay, good. Hello, sir. So my question is concerning you mentioned something about it. There is this particular issue concerning the OMCs. They get fined a lot. Some get fined.
We're not discussing the input and output of
that. And it is a trend with the locally owned OMCs. So can you that as an input? Either an input
All right. So like I said, we are not discussing people's work here today. We are not discussing people's work, okay? We will discuss people's work in the practical sessions. This is not the time of discussing people's individual. Otherwise, everybody will start talking about his input and output. So the only way you will know your input and output, the relevant input and output, is what I've indicated in red here. Okay, I'm saying that we are not discussing individual persons' input and output here. Okay, so we'll discuss that in practical session. But the only way you can now know the input and output is to search the literature. So most of the survey papers would have surveyed the industry and will be telling you the inputs and outputs that have been consistently used. So you will know that consistently they have used labor. But even the labor, what kind of labor? Is it hours of work? Is it the individual workers? Or it has been proxied by the number of the salaries? Or is both the salaries and allowances? You will know. So when we say labor, what goes into the labor? The details. Search the literature. Look at the articles. Look at the articles. Look at the articles. Search the literature. Look at the articles. Search the literature. Look at the articles. Okay? That is going to help you. This you normally get when you look at the taxonomy. Okay? When you are creating the tabular taxonomy of your work. So in creating the tabular taxonomy, you keep seeing that most of them are using full-time equivalent employees. Full-time equivalent employees. Full-time. Oh, then you get to know. Okay. So you will know from your learnings in the literature. Now, there is a detailed discussion on input and output on this YouTube link. that I will encourage you to go and watch. Okay. I will encourage you to go and watch. Let me show you that now.
How much money can you actually make in your first year of selling?
When you go to
other digital products, I'm not talking to revenue.
This is quite an old channel, but this professor, okay, is a well-known professor, and he was discussing a lot. We call it Subhash Ray. Professor Subhash Ray.
There are those who think of DEA as an extension of the India program. There are those like us who say DEA as an extension of production. So, okay, I can see that there is some wear and tear in the machine. How about the man?
So just go to that website and then just expand your knowledge on the input and output, okay? On the input and output that you are supposed to know and understand and have. I have again put that in your group page so that you'll be able to look at it and then study it and then understand what the man is discussing regarding the input and output. Do you understand me? If you do, just type yes. So note that, okay? You must be clear with the input and output. There is a snag, there's a little bit of catchy thing you got to note here. There is a catchy thing you got to note here, and it is this. In your selection of the input and output, I'm going to give you an example here. So let's take an example of a bank. And I know some of you are doing banks. One of the inputs of a bank is deposits. Deposits. Customer deposits, not company one, customer. Okay. Another input is salaries or staff costs. Sometimes you see staff costs. Sometimes you see employees' expenses. It is another input. I'm sharing with you the constant input. The fixed assets, okay, which you don't really see sometimes as fixed assets, but you see it as property, plants, and equipment. That is another input. It is a representation of the microeconomic knowledge we know of capital. And then financial capital or financial equity. Okay, shareholders' funds. This is a financial capital. The first one is physical capital. So these are the inputs of a bank. But what do the banks produce? Loans and advances. So you see this a lot, loans and advances, loans and advances, loans and advances, loans and advances. Then total investment, okay, all the other investments, okay, total investment. And sometimes some people split that and then talk about other earning assets, other earning assets. And then in some cases, for those who are doing corporate social responsibility, they will add that as CSR. CSR. Sometimes some people will have another output called non-performing loans or off-balance sheet activities. So the key point is this. Anytime you are choosing a particular input and output, identify at least 5 authors who have also used that input and output. Take note. Anytime you are using a particular input and output, identify at least 5 authors who have used the same input and output in their work. Why? Because you justify, that alone justifies and confirms that you are not the only one who has done that. Okay, if you are doing profit efficiency, you will need the prices of the input and the prices of the output. So the input prices, remember, the first input was deposit. Those of you who are doing cost productivity, you should know this. The first input is deposit. So the price of deposit will be, and in the literature, this is what has been used, interest expense divided by total deposits. In other words, the interest that you earn, sorry, the interest that you spend, okay, on the deposit, the interest expenditure on deposit divided by total deposit. Another input is salaries or staff cost. So now we talk about labor, that represents labor. Now you can see that in most cases, you will not get a number of employees. So that's why you might use the staff cost. And what is the price of labor? It is a personnel expense. So that same staff cost divided by total assets. That is how some in the literature have measured it. So you got to know that this is it. So that you will get at least 5 papers that have used that. And that is how you go about doing your own work. Finally, fixed assets. Fixed asset is the price of capital. If you want to know the price of fixed assets, the price of fixed assets is other operating expenses divided by the fixed asset. Other operating expenses divided by. Now, what about the output? The output, okay, the first output is loans and advances. So if you are talking about the price, you are talking about the price of loans and advances, which is interest divided by interest received on the loans divided by the loans themselves, the total loans and advances. Okay. Then the total investment. What will be the output price? Okay. The price of the total investment will be the investment income. Investment income. Sometimes you can do investment income divided by total investment. And then in this case, finally, the other earning asset. Again, that is investment income divided by total. You can't normally use total investment and use other earnings asset at the same time. Okay, you have to use them separately. Now, if you are thinking about CSR, okay, then the possible price of CSR will be the cost associated with a CSR divided by maybe total what do you call it? Total investments. Okay, total investment. So there are several ways, but you have to get the literature. Sometimes you don't know. So you got to use your intuition, not intuition, your right objective idea with your supervisor to be able to come out with a correct input and output. Okay, so how many inputs should you use? How many outputs should you use? Remember, the number of inputs are M, the number of outputs are S, and the number of firms is N. Now, there should be enough firms. That's what you should know. There should be enough firms relative to the input and output variables. And there's, in the literature, so many people have made some suggestions. Golani and Roll, they are saying that the number of firms, which is the N, should be at least 2 multiplying the addition of the variables. 2 multiplying the addition of the input and output variables. That's what they are saying. So let's say that your number of inputs is 2. The number of output are 3. Then it means that your sample size should be what? Type it for me. If your number of inputs, according to Golani, if your number of inputs are 2 and outputs are 3, what should be at least your sample size? What should be at least the sample size? You should have 10. 10. That's correct. Okay, that's correct. Now, according to Banker, it should be 3 times. So using the same input and output, 2 and 3, what do you think Banker is saying that the sample size should be? Banker is saying that the sample size should be what? At least how many? 15. 15, exactly. Excellent answers you're giving there. But according to Dyson, 2001, the title is, protocols. Okay, protocols in DEA. Okay. So he says that the sample size using this example should be how many? At least how many? The sample size should be at least how many? According to Dyson, it should be at least 12. Exactly. Excellent answers. So there are several people in the literature from 1999 up to 2014 and beyond who have made a lot of studies on the input and output to deal with. Yours is to use the one that you are comfortable with and also get a justification for. Okay. The one you are comfortable with and that you can get a justification for. So that is the input and output. That is the next thing to deal with after selecting your DMU, the input and output. Now, step 3. What is a step 3? The step 3 in efficiency and productivity analysis is to identify what aspect of efficiency or what aspect of productivity change you are dealing with. What aspect of efficiency, what aspect of productivity change that you are dealing with. So looking at the things here, who can tell me, and of course, whether you are dealing with productivity or efficiency, you will know. Okay. Tell me what you are dealing with. Type it there. Type it there, what you are dealing with. Which efficiency are you dealing with and which productivity are you dealing with? Nia Welbeck, you said technical efficiency. Perfect. What about you? Which one are you dealing with? Okay. Cost productivity change. Please remember, when you mention the productivity, make it dynamic productivity or make it productivity change. Okay. So, Stephen, you are dealing with dynamic productivity change. DK, you're dealing with dynamic productivity change. Richmond, I like your point. Richmond, you are smart. Okay. For not just writing, Stephen Morrison, the answer you've written is wrong. At DEA you have productivity change, that is true. Richmond, you have technical efficiency, pure technical efficiency skill. Perfect. You understand what you are doing, clearly. McClare, what you've written is wrong. Because I thought you are dealing with cost productivity change. That's what you are dealing with. But that's not what you've written. Okubuat is saying that you are dealing with technical efficiency. It's not enough because there were divisions. There were divisions that I would wish that you're able to bring. And then Theophilus mix inefficiency. Yes, perfect. Okay. Perfect. But Theophilus, you got to know that you're also dealing with technical efficiency. Technical efficiency. So you got to know which one you are dealing with. We have several points on efficiency. We look at each one of them. Okay. Morrison, what you wrote was wrong. So just change it or write the correct one there. Okay. So what is the difference between technical and mixed inefficiency or mixed efficiency? We'll look at that. We'll look at that. We'll look at that. How is pure technical efficiency different from skill efficiency? We'll look at that one too. By the way, what is it? Scope economics. How is it different from scale efficiency? Scope economics. What is allocative efficiency? What is cost efficiency? What are the other names of cost efficiency? Is it the same as economic efficiency? What is revenue efficiency? Revenue efficiency. But that word should be output overall. Okay, it should be output. All right. So if you look at revenue efficiency, it is also called output overall efficiency. And then you can talk about profit efficiency. Okay. You can have the productivity versions for all of these. So take notes. You can have the productivity versions for all. Okay, so you got to know all of these efficiencies. We'll look at them one by one. So let's start with the first one. The first one is known as technical efficiency. Technical. Technical has to do with the mind. It has to do with the acumen. It has to do with the management. The first person to define this technical efficiency is Farrell. Farrell says that when you reduce the inputs, and he uses something we call radial reduction. Guys, listen carefully and understand what radial reduction means. Radial means that in the direction of the origin. Radial is in the direction of the origin, and you're going to see a couple of examples very soon. So you are, when I say radial, another word is proportional. Proportional, so note that. Radial, that is proportional. So radial reduction in inputs is proportional reduction in inputs. So if a firm is able to reduce the inputs given the output or reduce the output given the input, that firm is said to be having technical efficiency. That's what it means. Technical efficiency. Okay. Now, how is that different from a firm that is not experiencing that? So guys, get something clear. Let me just show you something. Even though I was waiting to show you today. So this is a product. Let me just use this. Let me show you the production possibility set phase. So you can have this one, okay? And you can have another one, which is that. Okay. So I've just drawn a two variable space here. And then I'm going to draw a certain input-oriented graph. Okay, just some input-oriented graph. There you go. And then the third one, I'll just fix it here. Fantastic. So this is an input-oriented graph. And you have a particular firm that is in this production phase. Okay, so Stephen, you're asking that, can you say that efficiency change is the same as productivity change? No, because efficiency change is one aspect of productivity change. So when we come to productivity, you will get it. Efficiency is just one component of productivity change. All right, so let's assume that you have some firms that are located in this production space, okay, or the production possibility set. You have this firm there, you have this firm there, you have this firm, you have this one on the frontier, and you have this one on the frontier, and then you have another firm there. Okay. So let's assume that you are trying to measure the efficiency, okay, and this is an isoquant, so it's an input-oriented. You move in the direction of the origin anytime you are measuring any of them's the efficiency. You move in the direction of the origin. You always do. You always move in the direction of the origin. Okay. You always. So I'm trying to measure each person's performance, and I'm moving in the direction of the origin. Anytime you are measuring the efficiency, so why am I bringing it towards the origin? Because this is input oriented. So if I had an arrow, okay, what the arrow is doing now is that the arrow is moving from here, coming down there. So in the process, it will touch the frontier somewhere, the red frontier somewhere. Where it touches is where the firm should have been. But if you look at the firms that are already on the frontier, okay, when you look at the firms that are already on the frontier, like this firm, you will notice that they are already on the frontier. So when the firm is already on the frontier, the firm will be efficient. Efficient. Okay, efficient. However, those that are not on the frontier, they can't be. So let me go back to that point. So if you reduce all the inputs, okay, so if you look at the one I showed you here, okay, The inputs were what? The inputs were X1 here, and then X2 there. These were the inputs. And then you have these firms, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I. These firms are inside a frontier or on the frontier. And what is a frontier? The red line. So what it, for a firm to be efficient, for a firm B, B for boy, if a firm B is supposed to be efficient, the firm B will have to move along the radial line towards the origin. And in the process of that movement, when it hits the boundary point, that point now becomes where it's supposed to land. Therefore, you are able to now use that approach to determine efficiency. So what Farrell was doing is that Professor Farrell was defining efficiency in this format. And according to Farrell, if we are to get this efficiency definition clear, you will notice that when you are moving towards the origin and you are doing input orientation, you have to be reducing the input proportionally. Proportionally. Let me tell you what I mean by proportionally. Let's go back to the graph. Okay. Take a point like point B. I'll use a rectangle to show you the point. Okay. Point B. If I stand at point B and I draw a line and it touches the frontier, and I draw another line, okay, like this, until such a point where it gets to the origin, okay, the direction from the point B towards the origin is where that purple line is going through. So anytime I walk through the purple line, I will be able to get to the origin. And that is how, that's why, so what it means that the value on the horizontal axis, okay, is the same as the value on the vertical axis. Okay. So when you look at this, you will notice that the value on the horizontal axis, which is here, is the same value on the vertical axis. Okay. When these are the same, that is, you keep the ratio, then not when they are the same, but when you keep the ratio as you move down. As you move down from B to the origin, you are maintaining the ratio. You are keeping the ratio. So the ratio was, just show you something interesting. If the value here was 5, and if the value here was, say, 6, right? Then by the time we get here, okay, if this here, by the time we get to this point, if the value is now 2.5 here, then we expect that the value here will be what? Who can tell me? By the time we get to this section, if the value was 2.5, then we expect that the value on the vertical axis will be what? Let me see those. It's 3, excellent. It's 3. And that means that you are maintaining the ratio. Okay, that is what is called radial movement. So radial movement maintains the ratio. Okay, it's a proportionate movement. Okay, and you don't alter the proportionality. So going back to our analysis. Okay, so when you, that's how Farrell defined. But please note that you can also expand the output. You can expand the output, guys. You can. So let's go to the next one. You can now draw a line, a vertical line, and then draw another horizontal line. Okay. Do a vertical line, do a horizontal. Now, you can now identify the firms in the industry. Okay, so let's say this is one firm, one firm, one firm, one firm, one firm, one firm. Okay. But then what you are seeing here is you have output, not input. Okay. So when you look at if you have to number them, you have Y1 here and you have Y2 there. So this time is output. It is not input that you are dealing with. Okay. So how do you draw the frontier? Well, you're going to learn. You're going to learn all of this. Okay. You start from here. And to draw the frontier, you start from this section and trace it to the left till it hits the vertical line. And then come and pick another piecewise linear line from here to the extreme value. Then you pick another linear line, okay, to the extreme value. Then you pick another linear line, okay, to the extreme value before you now close it vertically with the horizontal line. Okay. So this is how you draw the output-oriented graph. So in the output-oriented graph, what it means is that those firms that are on the frontier are efficient. But those firms that are not on the frontier, you have to start from the origin, okay, move to where they are, okay, and then move them to the frontier. Okay. So the distance between where they are to the frontier is that inefficiency gap that you want to actually deal with. So this is an output oriented. Each one, you start from the origin, then you pass them. Okay. You start from the origin, you pass them, so you move them to the frontier. And that is how you are able to get an output orientation for that. So in this case, you are augmenting the output. You are increasing the output. Okay. So these two outputs, this output X, you are moving it to the frontier, okay, in the direction of the origin. In the direction of the origin, don't forget that. In the direction of the origin. So you do it in the direction of the origin like this. And then you cannot take a time and then move it till it hits the frontier. That is how you estimate the efficiencies of this. So Farrell, let's go back to Farrell. Farrell says what? Farrell says that if you are able to expand all the outputs, given the input, the way we went through the graph, there was no input there. So we assume that the input is given. Given the input, you are now able to now raise all the outputs. And that will mean that you are exhibiting output orientation, output orientation, output orientation. And that means that you are showing efficiency. So that is technical efficiency. Why is it managerial efficiency? It's managerial because it is attributed to management's expertise. Management are those that control the inputs and outputs. They pay the workers, they control the inputs and outputs. So this technical efficiency is sometimes called managerial efficiency, so that the people who are in the industries will understand. Any question? Any question?
You have taught us how we can come to these input and output, or how we can select them. It's not something that...
I'm saying that when you compare the efficiency of the banks at a particular point in time, like the year 2000, that is efficiency. That is efficiency. But when you compare the efficiency of the firm between the year 2000 and 2001, or you compare the year 2000 relative to the year 2001, or 2000 relative to 1999, it is no longer efficiency here. You are now going a step further to look at dynamic productivity or productivity change. So productivity change looks at performance of firms over time. And efficiency change looks at the performance of a firm at a time. So when we say technical efficiency, it is the management performance, okay? The management expertise, their knowledge, their skills, okay, that they are able to use to convert the input to the output, which led to that very score of technical efficiency. So it is managerial acumen that is embedded in that score, implicitly embedded in that score. So technical efficiency is managerial performance. So when we say that you are not efficient, we are not talking to the inputs and the outputs that were used. We are talking to the management. It's a managerial efficiency and hence a managerial inefficiency. It's an important point for you guys to be able to know that. Okay, very, very important point. I want to quickly talk about Koopman's efficiency. Remember, Farrell considered efficiency as the input reduction or output augmentation. Okay. Now, Koopman said that he went further. Koopman went further. He said that technical efficiency is not just the input reduction, okay, or just the output augmentation, but even it has to do with certain inputs or outputs that should have been considered but were not considered. So Koopman and Debru, they went further. Their definition of efficiency is deeper. They looked at the strict definition of technical efficiency, and they said that the technical efficiency is when the firm is strongly efficient. Farrell efficiency is said to be weakly efficient. Weakly. And why is it weakly? It is weak when it is incorporating slacks. Sorry, it's weak when it didn't take into account slacks. The efficiency is said to be weakly. The technical efficiency of Farrell, that one is said to be weakly, okay, when it did not consider slacks. What are slacks? Okay. Those slacks are the unused resources. So let me give you an example. So sometimes you are supposed to use certain resources fully. So let's say that a particular bank is supposed to use their resources, like, let's take a typical job. Okay? The individual members are supposed to work 8 hours a day. So the number of hours of work is 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week. But because of laziness, some people come to work late and they leave the workplace very early. So in essence, they don't use all the 8 hours. So eventually they use actually 6 hours a day. Now when you multiply the 6 hours by 5 days, instead of the 40 hours, now they are using what? 30 hours. Now, you use this 30 hours in the computation of the technical efficiency, and then it says that the firm is efficient. How can the firm be efficient? Because all the hours that are supposed to be used were not used. Now, the 10 hours are unused hours. And these hours that have not been used, they go wasted, because once that day is gone, we go to the next day. You don't say that go and work further 2 hours that you lost the previous day. You guys get it? And so that unused hours, 2 hours, 2 hours, multiplied by 5, which is 10 hours, it becomes wastage. This is what is known as the slacks. But then in that case, then why was the firm still efficient? Because that efficiency was calculated under the principle of Farrell efficiency. So what the Koopman's and Debru efficiency does is that it incorporates the slacks. So in this case, we will punish this firm for not fully utilizing all the inputs. Not fully utilizing all the inputs, okay? And those inputs are now wasted. So the wasted 10 must be part of the computation of its efficiency. And if we should include that as part of its efficiency, you will see that that firm will not be fully efficient. That firm will be inefficient, okay? And so if Farrell called it efficient, then it's supposed to be weakly efficient. Because the true strongly efficient firms are those that have zero slacks. Zero slacks means that you have used all your inputs. So there is no mix inefficiency. There is no mix inefficiency. So please note the difference between technical efficiency and mixed efficiency. Okay, and I want to take you back here. Technical efficiency and mixed efficiency. So mixed efficiency is that kind of, or mixing efficiency is that sort of inefficiency due to the wrong use of the inputs. So some of the inputs were not used. And because some of the inputs were not used, you were able to produce whatever you want to produce, but without taking into consideration, another portion of the other input. So let's say that you have labor, 10 workers and 10 laptops. 10 workers, 10 laptops. And then what you did is that you decided to fire. Yeah, don't worry, I'm explaining this further. Okay, so you're able to fire 4 workers. Okay, and you still have the laptops there. But the thing is that who needs the computers now? You fired 4 workers, you've cut down the inputs. And so what do you do with those computers? You try and sell them to generate income. You don't keep those computers there because you are wasting those resources. That is mixing efficiency. That is the presence of slacks in there. So that is another form of efficiency. Now let's go to the next efficiency, which is pure technical efficiency. So in the course of this course, you learn, you're going to learn something. And it is the fact that one of the efficiency is attributable to variable returns to scale. And another is attributable to constant returns to scale. So take note. The constant returns to scale was postulated by Chance, Cooper, and Rose. And we'll come back to learn them. Chance, Cooper, and Rose. But the variable returns to scale was postulated by BCC, Banker, Chance, and Cooper in 1984. Now listen, we just defined technical efficiency some few minutes ago. And you guys said technical efficiency is when you reduce the inputs, holding the output constant, or increase the output, holding the input constant. Take note of this simple definitions. Okay, that's technical efficiency. Reducing inputs, keeping the output, or increasing output, keeping the input. That's technical. But we didn't say that technical efficiency score is purely due to managerial acumen. Because remember that the inputs and the output that you are trying to change and do something with it to lead to the efficiency. Listen carefully here, because this is a bit of abstract. Now, the inputs and the outputs are being used in a certain production system, the DMUs. So let's take, for example, bank once again. You are using labor, you are using capital, you are converting deposits into loans in a building that is a fixed asset. The loans are changing hands, there is interaction and all of that. But and you attributed the technical efficiency to management. Management know-how, their expertise, their intellect, their acumen. It is that mental gymnastics of the management that led to the overall efficiency score that you had. But the managers were not operating on their own. They were operating using computers. They were operating using some building. They were in the building. So those things may have also led to that efficiency score that you are attributing it only to management. Those things are called the size of the firm, the scale of the firm. And that may have led to the efficiency of the management. So if you want to know whether management solely their brain, their intellect, their expertise, their acumen, their intellectual capacity, okay, if you want to know that it was just their intellectual capacity that they used to generate that efficiency score that you have, then you have to, remove the scale effect from it. When the scale effect, the scale effect are the computers, the size, the other things, those other physical things that management are using. If you take them out of the picture, then that efficiency that is left is pure technical efficiency. But when that efficiency is part, when the efficiency attributed to scale of operations, attributed to size of the company, attributed to the fixed asset, to the plant, property, and equipment, when those things are part of it, then that efficiency is technical. It's not pure technical. So there is that part of the efficiency which is coming from the size of the firm, and that efficiency is known as scale efficiency. Scale efficiency. So scale efficiency here, okay, and I'll come back to that, but let me just point out because I'm just ending it here. Scale efficiency here deals with that sort of efficiency by virtue of the size of the firm or of the DMU, not just the management. Let me give you an example. Okay, let's assume that you have a student that goes to Presbyterian Secondary School. Okay, the student goes to the secondary school, and that student had, 6 A's, excellent, 4.0 GPA. Now, people will say that the student is so good, yeah? Fantastic student, incredible. This is a, precocious child. Mental gymnastics is 100%. This student is beautifully intelligent with the, brain power. Fantastic. That's what people are going to say. But what they didn't know is that the facilities provided in the school really facilitated the learning environment of the student. Because if we were to compare that student with another student who was living in Baudrillard Secondary School, who has no light, who is not learning in an air-conditioned room, the person will only have to learn during the day. In the evening, he's learning in a mosquito-infested environment. He has no library like this presec student will have. This presec student has excellent teachers, wonderful library, air-conditioned rooms, internet is free, Wi-Fi. But that gentleman in village doesn't have that. And yet, both of them had 4.0. You see, so if you say that these students are equally good, that is not true. That is not true, because the one in the village is better than the one in presec. Because given the scale, given the environment, the one in the village should not be able to do what he's done. So we need to now look at efficiency and split that efficiency. So let me show you something here. Okay. This is learning, man. This is learning. So when you look at the technical efficiency, which is divine, that technical efficiency, we need to know that it is split into the pure technical part and then the scale part. So that scale part is the efficiency which is attributable to the size or the facilities or the operations under which the student actually achieved his own personal, pure managerial or pure personal efficiency. And it's the same thing with the institutions. So the institutions, okay, it's not just your intellectual capacity, it's not just your knowledge that led to the score, it's not just your expertise and mastery and competence and proficiency. It has to do with something which is outside of you, but is helping you to actually operate on the principle of what you are operating. So the beautiful thing about efficiency is that you can attribute one portion of the efficiency to pure technical, and you can attribute one portion to the scale efficiency that we know, scale efficiency. So scale efficiency is due to the size. Pure technical efficiency is due to pure managerial intellect. So technical efficiency is going to now be pure technical efficiency times the scale efficiency times the mix efficiency. Okay, ideally, that is how it's going to be now. So that is a principle to have in mind.